them into a separate podcast. So here's a few case studies from Phyllis, Smuland, and I. Case studies are always great because they're actual real life examples of all the methodology we talk about on the podcast. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you. The first case study is with an American Pit Bull Terrier named Evie. She was with a couple trainers before Phyllis got her. One of them, we were told, put Evie in a crate in the middle of a daycare environment with an e-collar on, and when she reacted to dogs, Evie would just go ballistic. There were a lot of reasons why this did not work with Evie. One is it usually isn't a good way to teach a dog anything, is to put them in a wire crate in the middle of a bunch of triggers. But two, Evie was also a 5-week puppy syndrome puppy, which means she was removed from the litter and the mother very young. And what this happens to do to a dog is to prevent them from understanding any kind of corrections. They miss all the learning from the mama dog teaching them about pressure and how to release that pressure. And so with a dog like Evie, a lot of times corrections don't work until the dog can learn what a correction is, and also more dog body language and how to relieve pressure that's put on the dog. So for example, a normal dog might tell another dog like, hey, don't take my bone, by glaring at it, and then maybe growling, maybe snapping. And so this is something that 5-week puppies don't understand because they miss that 5 to 8 week time frame in their development that teaches them this. So you cannot take a 5-week puppy and just start correcting it by any means, especially with an e-collar, because they do not know how to turn off pressure. So that's the very first thing you have to teach them, is to understand dog body language and also about pressure and release, which is something we all know and everyone must know. So for example, if we're standing too close to someone in line at the grocery store and they're getting closer and closer behind us, we'll step forward to relieve that uncomfortable feeling. So this is an example of how all creatures know pressure and how to release it. So Evie had missed this in her development. There's a lot to be said from forming an understanding with the dog, not just correcting the dog for its behavior. And once you form an understanding with very little or no distractions, then you can build on that. And you'll hear in this case study that Phyllis really didn't formally train this dog much at all. She actually found that the more pressure she put on the dog, the worse the dog would get. And for example, she was riding in the car with us and she started whining, and we just ignored her and she quickly calmed down. But if we would have started trying to make her be quiet or tell her no or whatever, that would have escalated her. So this is a case where finesse comes into play. You really have to know the dog, get to know what works for them and what helps them and what doesn't. She was also showing signs of dog aggression and was living in New York City. So it was a very difficult environment for her owners, to say the least. And they eventually found Phyllis Smuland through Jason Cohen of Canine Cohen. So here's a little bit about her story. If you want to learn more about Evie, you can also listen to the podcast about sitting with Phyllis and I. Usually, I think with Evie, what you were saying, so I can summarize what you did with her, is that you got her to follow you.
Yep.
Basically, if you said, let's go, she'll just walk with you.
Yep.
And
I go 1, 2, 3, EVD.
The new official, the official cue for following.
I don't say anything. I just move and the dog follows me.
And then you've taught her probably to move away from stressful situations, right? If she's getting too amped, You tell her to either come to you or look towards you or move away.
I move away and she follows me, right? Would be one option. If she's on a long line, yes, I taught her to move away from things. Like she would go in on a dog and just start thinking about it. And then she got to a place where she'd look at me and go, no, just kidding. I'll go over here. Not going to do that. But that wasn't because I corrected her with harsh corrections or like no prong collar, no e-collar, no recall to come back to me, because what does that do? I want the dog coming in fast when they do recall. I want that dog running to me from wherever the hell it is. So
Right.
now I'm bringing up too much speed and too much even prey drive in a dog like her. I don't want that.
Especially
So
if you
it's just
food.
no food, never. No
Yeah,
food.
what I was saying, if you use food for recall, that's activating prey drive.
It is, which is why I didn't with her. I did not use food. I brought in prey after 6 months of working with her. I took her out in my dog run and I got one of those big jolly balls with the handle on it.
Yeah.
And I threw it and she just stood there and looked at it like, shit, what do I do with this? And like, this was dog go after a ball. Like she loved to go after stuff, fluffy stuffed animals, tennis balls, anything. Like she'd chase it, grab it. And she just stood there for a second. Then she walked over there kind of slow, a little stalking, and like poked at it a little bit. And I didn't do anything. So I picked up and threw it again for her. And she kind of trotted towards it. And she was real calm for about 5 minutes, kind of like I'm going to watch it and kind of stalk it a little bit, right? And then she picked it up and she shook it. And when she picked it up and shook it, her eyes changed, a little bit of dilated eyes. It took me 2 days to get her back.
Okay.
Because like right away, she wanted to go back into like trying to push with the dogs and like all of that. Just in that short period of time, after 6 months of zero bringing up any kind of predatory behavior. So did my training actually change the dog? No. The conditioned and keeping the dog under that type of, keeping her in that position where she's in a calm state of mind all the time is what helped the dog. So if I bring back into a predatory state, I'm just telling her like, hey, you can do this again. And I don't want her to do that, especially as she's maturing and growing up and learning things.
Right.
I was always known for being able to have pack of 9 male pit bulls living together, and these were dogs that were pulled out of dog fights and all kinds of stuff. These are real pit bulls. And how would I get them to live together and not fight? There I did a lot of it. I will admit I did a lot of obedience training with dogs, but it wasn't about excitement in obedience. Being calm around each other all the time, not getting them worked up, not doing things. And I did compete in weight pull, but my dogs in weight pull were also the ones that would sit and wait, and I'd jump that line and call them, and they'd give it all their heart to pull, right? Other people would be struggling just to get their dog to stay there so they could hop across the line and call the dog and be like, how'd you get your dog to do that? And I was like, she's not in the game until she's in the game. So when she starts pulling, she's using all of her energy and all of her efforts in that one moment. But otherwise, she's draining all of that. So it's the same thing. And like when I got some training in disaster search and rescue work, that little bit that I did, my dogs would be calm and they'd be waiting to go into a building, and everybody else's dogs would be screaming in the car, barking and just pulling on the leash and sitting there and just going crazy, draining all the energy. So the guy that I learned under, and a couple of guys I trained under, they were like, yeah, don't waste the energy, right? They would fault police dogs for being in the car and barking and going nuts for no reason, unless maybe there was a trigger like the siren or whatever, the police car, but not just because somebody walks by the car.
Usually, I mean, I think with Evie, what you were saying, so I can summarize what you did with her, is that you got her to follow you.
Yeah.
Basically, if you said, let's go, she'll just walk with you.
Yeah.
And
no, I go 1, 2, 3, EVD.
The new official, the official cue for following.
I don't say anything. I just move and the dog follows me.
And then you've taught her probably to move away from stressful situations, right? If she's getting too amped, you tell her to either come to you or look towards you or move away.
I move away and she follows me, right? Would be one option. If she's on a long line, yes, I taught her to move away from things. Like she would go in on a dog and just start thinking about it. And then she got to a place where she'd look at me and go, no, just kidding. I'll go over here. not going to do that. But that wasn't because I corrected her with harsh corrections or like no prong collar, no e-collar, no recall to come back to me, because what does that do? I want the dog coming in fast when they do recall. I want that dog running to me from wherever the hell it is. So
Right.
now I'm bringing up too much speed and too much even prey drive in a dog like her. I don't want that.
Especially if
So
you
it's
use
just
food.
no food, never, no
Yeah,
food.
what I was saying, if you use food for recall, that's activating prey drive.
It
What?
is, which is why I didn't with her. I did not use food. I brought in prey after 6 months of working with her. I took her out in my dog run and I got one of those big jolly balls with the handle on it.
Yeah.
And I threw it and she just stood there and looked at it like, shit, what do I do with this? And like, this was dog go after a ball. Like, she loved to go after stuff, fluffy stuffed animals, tennis balls, anything. Like, she'd chase it, grab it. And she just stood there for a second. Then she walked over there kind of slow, a little stalking, and like poked at it a little bit. And I didn't do anything. So I picked up and threw it again for her. And she kind of trotted towards it. And she was real calm for about 5 minutes, kind of like, I'm going to watch it and kind of stalk it a little bit, right? And then she picked it up and she shook it. And when she picked it up and shook it, her eyes changed, a little bit of dilated eyes. It took me 2 days to get her back.
Okay.
Because like right away, she wanted to go back into like trying to push with the dogs and like all of that. Just in that short period of time, after 6 months of zero bringing up any kind of predatory behavior. So did my training actually change the dog? No. The conditioned and keeping the dog under that type of, keeping her in that position where she's in a calm state of mind all the time is what helped the dog. So if I bring back into a predatory state, I'm just telling her like, hey, you can do this again. And I don't want her to do that, especially as she's maturing and growing up and learning things.
Right.
I was always known for being able to have pack of 9 male pit bulls living together, and these were dogs that were pulled out of dog fights and all kinds of stuff. These were real pit bulls. Now, how would I get them to live together and not fight? There, I did a lot of it. I will admit, I did a lot of obedience training with dogs, but it wasn't about excitement and obedience. Being calm around each other all the time, not getting them worked up, not doing things. And I did compete in weight pull. But my dogs in weight pull were also the ones that would sit and wait, and I'd jump that line and call them, and they'd give it all their heart to pull, right? Other people would be struggling just to get their dog to stay there so they could hop across the line and call the dog and be like, how'd you get your dog to do that? And I was like, she's not in the game until she's in the game. So when she starts pulling, she's using all of her energy and all of her efforts in that one moment. But otherwise, she's draining all of that. So it's the same thing in like when I got some training in disaster search and rescue work, that little bit that I did, my dogs would be calm and they'd be waiting to go into a building, and everybody else's dogs would be screaming in the car, barking and just pulling on the leash and sitting there and just going crazy, draining all the energy. So the guy that I learned under, and a couple of guys I trained under, they were like, yeah, don't waste the energy, right? They would fault police dogs for being in the car and barking and going nuts for no reason, unless maybe there was a trigger like the siren or whatever, the police car, but not just because somebody walks by the car. Evie, I worked with that dog for 6 months. 6 months, and people go, that's crazy. I could have done that in 3 weeks. Really? You could have done that in 3 weeks. And the dog would have been just relaxed and happy and content and really like being cool around other dogs. And the dogs go tearing out after stuff and like she's there. She's not allowed to do that. I have the compliance now where she's like, yeah, I'm just going to look over at you. And then we go, well, is she off leash? Does she get to off leash run with all the pack? And like when they chase, can she chase too and you have her come back? No. The idea is that she just doesn't go there.
And some
right?
people would argue, like, when does she ever get to be a dog and let all her sillies out?
The type of dog that she wants to be is the type of dog that wants to kill another dog. Why should I let her be what she wants to be?
Yeah.
She has a great life, suppressed from wanting to really hurt a dog.
Yeah.
She lives in harmony with a group of dogs. She has an abundance of things to chew on. She goes on nice long walks. She goes out on the trail. We do all kinds of agility stuff with her. When and if she's physically capable, I might consider doing some weight pull with her.
Yeah.
But she had a lot of problems because she was malnourished as a puppy, and so her growth wasn't what it should be. And she's not nearly as muscled up as she would be for her breed normally at this age. So she has to grow up a little bit more before I can do that kind of stuff with her. There's a lot of fun in there. She loves to go for car rides. We can go on walks with other dogs. There's all kinds of things that we can do. But no, it doesn't include any kind of like why I gave her that ball. It took her 2 days. It took 2 days to get her balanced back out.
Yeah, and then you're just instilling conflict in the dog, and it goes back to those neural pathways, right, in the brain. That if those kinds of predatory neural pathways in her brain don't fire over a long period of time, they're going to become less strong than her well-behaved neural pathways. But the minute you let that neural pathway fire again, prey-driven one, it's going to work against you in achieving the calm neural pathway.
Yeah. And then they say, well, like, this dog got lucky. This dog was supposed to live in New York City for the rest of her life.
Right.
And she had, unusual people who loved her and like literally moved across the country to California for the dog.
Yeah.
Yes, for the dog, 100% for the dog. But there were 2 other pit bulls involved in that family. We had 2 other families that had to be involved in helping this dog. They were expecting their first child, and there was no concern at all about this dog for me with people, not even a little bit. But in the end, they also made the right decision to let her live here.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to live in the city, and she doesn't have to have compliance. And so we say, well, what about the dogs that have to? Then they need longer training programs to get them balanced out and trusting you before you put them back into the fire. As far as I'm concerned, right? You can still get there. And I'm not necessarily saying 6 months, but 6 months for me, because I expected this dog to live off a leash in my house with a pack of dogs. Compliance for living with the owners would have, for me, been probably 2.5 months. And then you're still asking a lot of the dog. I had to go backwards with her because she had the wrong things that were done from the time she was rescued until the time that these people found Jason, who helped them greatly. And then through Jason, they found me. Do you remember the brown dog and the white pit bull that lived on the top floor in DC? And that white pit bull loved dogs. Boy, she loved every dog she ever met. And she would seriously, seriously hurt a person. And she was really human aggressive. Surprise. Pit bull loves other dogs, despite a human. Her owner was very petite and handled that dog quite well with training. Her husband was a big burly guy, military guy, workout fiend that would get so worried about her hurting somebody that he would restrain her. And it took a long time to try to get him to understand, like, you can't hold her back. And even if you physically could, your wife can't do what you could do. Right? And look, she just goes in the elevator, steps in front of the dog, tells the person next car, my dog's not friendly, puts her hand out. And you try to force the dog in the corner and hold the leash tight and hope to God that she can't reach the person that's on the other side of the elevator going, oh shit, maybe I should take the next car. So it's not about the obedience training isn't what made that dog listen. What made that dog listen to them in the end was them changing how they felt about their surroundings, how they interacted with that dog in the house. Well, guess what she did anytime she was watching somebody before she'd go after? She would be in a sit. Yeah. And then she would launch at stuff. I actually did train that dog on an e-collar for recall in the city. And there was always a long line on that dog also. You could go and play with other dogs in the court with the fence that was just for that neighborhood where the owner could stand on the outside and the dogs would be on the inside, but not the humans.
Right. She can't go play with the humans.
Nope. But teaching that dog obedience and sit, stay, and downstay was not actually what I did with that dog. I teach her to avoid conflict and to move away and to be behind her owners, always behind, never in front. And I had to get the guy to learn how to relax.
We had another case, the blue pit bull that lived downtown.
The what?
Oh, are you getting on me? Okay, blue bully mix type dog.
I mean, there's such thing as a blue pit bull, but they're few and far between anyway.
but you know who I'm talking about, right?
No.
Live downtown in the high rise. We brought the little white fluffy dog.
Oh, Georgia.
Georgia. Yeah.
Georgia was all blue. She was pit bull,
Yeah.
but
Uh,
she had no white on her.
yeah. I went with you on several lessons. I don't think we ever made that dog sit or stay.
No. Keep moving.
Yeah.
Yep, and we had her in the hallway with the little white fluffy dogs like lunging at her and going crazy. And what actually I taught her to go to the other side. Remember I taught her to move
Yeah.
behind me
Yeah.
from my left side to my right side to avoid dogs. And that dog was labeled to be very dog aggressive. And what the trainer did prior to us working with her was like literally have her go around a corner and wait for a dog to come and then pop out from around the corner as soon as the dog would be right in that area and load the dog up with food. Her reactivity became much more intense with that training. And what it actually taught the dog was to hurry up and look around a corner because there's going to be a dog. And so she would get excited and like start to go after the dog, and then she would feed her treats. And it did the opposite because they waited for the reaction.
Right. The timing.
Right?
Hey,
The
Ron.
timing was way off. I used some gates and a long line initially until I knew she wasn't going to do anything, just for safety reasons. But really, like on her own, she always moved away from the dogs. That particular owner actually requested that I train the dog on a prong collar. And she didn't need it because I sent her home on a martingale. And she said just made her feel more comfortable. And I think we put the tips on it, like had it really low on her. And she like never really even had to use the collar, but it made the owner feel like she had more control. What a great dog. The dog also got to a place where she just would come and board with me, and like I just would let her in my house. She just like hung out with all my dogs. And that dog was labeled to be dangerous with dogs, really dog aggressive. And she really wasn't at all. She
Yeah.
was scared of dogs.
Right.
So remember, there's a video of her with Angela's little chihuahua I gave Angela.
Oh,
And she goes, "Wow." And Georgia goes, "Okay, I'm just gonna go over here and lay my head down." Like, we called it the big white dog, but it was
yeah, it was Biggie was his name. The one we did here with the rest.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, the one we did at Angela's house. The last one we did.
Big white
Big
dog.
white dog, looked like a greyhound mix, but it was pit bull with brindle
right.
patches. And the girl was doing all kinds of great stuff, like medically for this dog because it had all kinds of health problems.
Your client's dog?
Yeah, it was my client.
Yeah.
Were you on the lesson with me at her house where so her dog wanted to react and go after dogs, and she also had gone to a board and train program where they did, I don't know, the dog came home on a prong collar, a sidekick, and an e-collar after I think a 2 or 3 week board and train. I think it was 2 weeks for reactivity. And
okay, hold on. I just want to say that if you have to use that many tools on a dog to get it to walk down the street, there's something wrong with.
well, like, I mean, did you condition any of those correctly? Because the dog was only there for 14 days.
Especially
So
this dog.
and I had her just keep moving with him because there had been a lot of like make him sit, make him stay, make him sit, make him lay down, make him down stay, do the cot, like all this stuff, right? And I got her to get him to stop looking out windows was a big one, and like not going out, not peeking out the door for her. And I took Ayla out and I put her on a long line and had her walking on the other side of the street on just a 6-foot leash. And I told her, just hold on to the handle of the leash and just trust me and just keep walking. And I let Ayla out, and Ayla started going into the street, and he looked across, and Ayla just went, okay, well, I'm going to go over here. And then he goes, okay, cool. I'm just going to go straight. And then I started showing her like the less tension that you have, the less likelihood of the dog is going to go after something. Now, we also have to be careful. Like, I don't want the dog stepping in front of her and tripping her up. So it really was just a point. Like, I just want you to watch and see this happen, right? Versus this is what I want you doing. And in the end, all I had her do was shorten up the leash and walk and just keep moving. I didn't do anything else. And we took all the pressure off the dog, and the dog stopped reacting. it stopped going after dogs. And all she had to do was put her hand out a little bit if the dog started cinching up a little bit of tension in the leash, and then,
I
we
think,
know where it all.
well, I think part of this comes from too, people are like, well, then what are you doing exactly? Like, and
I'm teaching the owner how to properly interact and have a good, positive relationship with their dog before they start making the dog comply to things. Because first of all, if the relationship isn't there, the dog isn't going to comply to them anyway. So if they're trying to make the dog listen, it's going to be harder for them, which is why it's going to offset when we take the dog in, train it, and give it back. It may last for a little while, but it's not necessarily going to last forever because the client's the one that needs the skills. We know how to train dogs. That's why we're in this business. Well, it's not about us. It's not about us being able to train the dog. It's about us being able to give the client. And so I look at that and I'm like, well, what can the client do? Like I have a client right now I'm working with that has pit bull, and like she's got a bad neck and upper spinal cord. She cannot get yanked on a leash.
Yeah.
She cannot. Right? So I had her start teaching the dog how to do things in the house and in the backyard. I had the husband walking the dog initially until the dog got enough skills, and now, it won't be a problem, right? But I wasn't going to have her go out there and start practicing how to teach the dog how to heel. And that's the day, I don't know, the loose dog across the street happens to come out the door, and it's the first day the owner's out there trying to teach the dog something, and she's potentially going to get injured. So it depends on that's my first thing. Like, what can the client handle? Like, they're already calling us because they're in trouble, right? And in the case that we're dealing with aggression, like, it's a safety thing. Like, no, they need to learn how to handle some things and take the dog out of a situation that's dangerous. And yes, that means the dog's in a high rise and they have to go in an elevator every day, and the dog needs to come in for training quicker than later. Well, then sometimes that's what happens. And in the case that I'm not going to do a board and train, then we're going to muzzle condition the dog before the dog even leaves the apartment, Well, or we're going to take the stairwell and we're going to go down ahead. We're going to, we're going to do certain things to avoid people from getting hurt. And so sometimes, like, my first tool training would be muzzle conditioning for the client.
Yeah.
For the client's dog.
I think trainers wonder how they sell training if it's not obviously complicated. All right, time for a little brief word from our sponsor, which is my business, Heart to Heart Canine. Ryder is chewing on a bone in the background, so excuse the noise. I have several workshops coming up I wanted to let everyone know about. These workshops are not like any workshops I know of out there. Usually I'm working with fearful or feral dogs in front of you live. We go over how I have rehabbed feral dogs for the last 5 years for adoptive homes. And the dogs become quite normal around their people. So if you want to learn how to help fearful and feral dogs to succeed and live a best quality of life and truly thrive, not being managed and not kept in a small environment and having to use pee pads inside, come to my workshops and check it out. If you are in rescue, if you're a dog trainer, if you have a fearful or feral dog, these are great opportunities for you to get a lot of information at a very reasonable price. I go into great detail about how I work with these dogs and use dogs as demonstrations during the workshops. So please check out my website, HART2CANINE.com/store or the workshop tab for all my locations. I'm going to be in Utah in April, and then we're having the original Fearful Feral Dog Workshop in New Mexico, where the shelter usually has at least five feral dogs. And then I'm going to be in Devon, England in September, and then North Carolina in late October. I'll also be speaking at the ICP conference in July. If you don't work with feral dogs, I promise you, you will learn things that will help you train all dogs better. And back to our show. I went and saw a lady Tuesday, and all I really went over with her was how to, she's older and she's worried about getting pulled over by her dog. But the way she was holding the leash was setting her up to be pulled over, right? Like, hold your hands down at your sides. And mentally, she kept worrying about what was going to happen with the dog. And then the dog in the house her husband is ill. So the dog's a little afraid of the husband. And so all we did was like the husband just walked around and we just walked the dog past the husband. And she had to remain.
Yeah.
And like, there's no obedience training in that. But people are like, really? People pay you for that? And I'm like, they love this stuff because it's easy for them. It doesn't require a huge amount of like timing or lots of things in their hands, a lot of coordination on the client's part. And it just fits in with their lifestyle.
Well, I know, but that's relationship-based training. So if the trainer said, well, what am I teaching? If I'm not teaching obedience, what am I actually teaching the dog? We're not saying that you're not teaching the dog obedience. You're not doing performance obedience. He'll sit down, stay, he'll sit down, stay, right? You're teaching the dog to stay behind you. The first thing you're doing that's going to take you time, depending on the level of fear or the level of reactivity or insecurity or whatever's going on with the dog, right? Or let's just say the dog's like super forward, okay? You need to still build that respectful relationship or relationship of trust with that dog before you're going to start really getting the dog to do things for you. And I'm not saying that you can't put a tool on a dog and make it do things. Any of us can do that. It's about how do you get the dog to do these things that you're keeping for your client. You are teaching this dog stuff. You're teaching the dog to stay behind you, teaching the dog to wait at the door. You're teaching the dog a recall. You're teaching the dog how to loose lead walk, or even if you want to call it a heel, the dog's staying right next to you. You're teaching the dog to be able to do those things around distractions. How are you not training the dog? You're absolutely training the dog.
Yeah.
And easier for the client. And then, yes, you should teach the dog like to go to its place. Do I believe in like having the dog be in its place all day long? No. I also feel like at some point in the training, the dog needs to learn to be able to move around freely in the house and not misbehave. Are we teaching the dog not to jump up on the counters? Well, how are we doing that? Well, we can quickly do that with an e-collar, right? But are we teaching the dog what we want, which is not to go near the counter in the first place? Not that if they go for something, they're going to get corrected for it. How about if you don't even need the correction? Right. You know, teach the dog what's expected first. And in teaching the dog what's expected first, I would say properly done, that should take a month. In my that's how I feel, right? So the dog has begun to learn exactly what it is you want, and now it's likely to stick longer. If you do a shorter period of time and you're just teaching obedience skills, it's just performing tricks. It's going through a repetition. You know, we're teaching the dog to do these things over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? And so that's all they know to do. So they follow around and they just do all these things. Well, what are you doing when you're not doing that? I would ask the trainer, what are you teaching the dog when you're not teaching obedience? That's for life skills for the dog when the dog goes home. Are you teaching the dog how to hang out in the house? Are you teaching the dog how to behave around people? Let's say you have an excitable, just goofball of a dog that's like all over the place. Play bow in front of the person coming in the house. Let me go get my toy. I'm going to come back over here. What are we doing now? I'm like flying across the couch but no malice out of it, right? Teach that dog how to behave in the house. Sure, you can teach the dog obedience, but then you're going to tell the owner, keep the leash in your hand, keep the remote in your hand, and do obedience. When are they just living with the dog? So to me, it takes more to teach the dog basic life skills than it does to teach a dog to heel, sit down, stay with a tool, because we can all teach the dog to do the heel, sit down, stay stuff in a matter of days even. I did a little, I had a couple dogs come out for off leash, for recall, just recall. And I trained those dogs in obedience on a leash, with the exception of sit and sit stay. I did not do any sit, sit, stay. I taught the dogs to loose lead walk. I taught the dogs how to behave around distractions. I taught the dog how to do recalls on a drop line around my pack running loose. I taught the dogs how to wait in an open door regardless of distractions. So trained dogs to do all these things, right? But I needed dogs to do an off-leash recall around like heavy, heavy distractions. How long do you think it took me to teach those dogs on an e-collar how to do a recall when they already had the understanding? Now, mind you, on a long line, they would come to me no matter what was going on. So they had to have that skill to me before I was going to layer the e-collar on it anyway. But how long do you think it actually took me to teach them with the e-collar how to do a recall after they already knew what recall meant?
2
Is that
days.
making sense? It took me 2 days.
Yeah.
So does it take 3 weeks to e-collar train a dog? Or are we just training the dog and then utilizing a tool for a client, which is how I've always done it, right? I train the dog first, and then depending on what the client needs tool-wise, I'm utilizing that. So we think about the client that I had that was in a wheelchair, right? She had a golden doodle and an Australian Shepherd golden retriever mix, both extraordinarily high prey drive. One of them extremely nervous, the other one a little territorial, right? We can guess which one's which there. And the one was all crawling up inside of her chair and everything, wanted to lay across underneath, and the other one wanted to go after everything that moved, the squirrels and the rabbits. And then she had a property on a farm where there were horses walking by her as she's going down the road with her wheelchair, right? They want to go after the horses, and then the people on horses had off-leash dogs. And like, these are all the things she had to deal with. 6 weeks obedience training, 2 weeks e-collar. So the e-collar was for who? For me, train the dogs? Or did I actually train the dogs what was expected, and then the e-collar was for the client in case the client needed a correction? And so now I have to get the dogs to make a mistake to understand when I'm going to use a form of correction. Well, I've already done some of that. I've already administered corrections for making mistakes, because you got to catch it right the first time. But first I built the relationship. Now that you trust me and now that you know what's expected, I teach them what's expected. Now I'm going to set them up where there's a problem. Now I'm going to teach them one time. You're not allowed to do that. Don't try to kill the cat. Don't go after the squirrel. Don't do all these things. But all the skills are there first. Now I'm using correction. So now if I'm going to layer the e-collar, I'm going to find a reason for that dog to make a mistake. And I'm going to layer the e-collar with, let's say, a prong collar correction at the same time. It takes one time. One time. And then my biggest issue is like, here's the remote for the client. When do they need it? When did you use your remote for your dogs?
Rarely.
Once the training is done, how often did you have to use the remote to get your dog to come back to you?
I don't know, maybe 5 times in their lifetime or something.
How many years is that?
10.
Okay, so my point is, if the dog is trained correctly the first time, corrections are minimally to never necessary. And what I see now is that we're using a form of any kind of correction to get the dog for compliance is different. And they're dogs, they're animals, right? They're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. And that's when you need to be ready. We're going to train the dog on off-leash recall, and you're going to have your dog off-leash. You need to have your tool with you, and it needs to be on correctly. Right? What I'm not doing is having to take the dog out and practice with this dog all the time, and I'm not having to use my tool anymore. And in a lot of cases, like we're not even having to, like in the case of using prong collars or any of that kind of thing, like it's not even needed. I mean, a lot of these dogs end up on flat collars within a matter of a couple of years. The owners just don't need the tools anymore, right? And why is that?
Because their relationship is good and they practiced enough to instill good behavior over.
No, it's not about the tool, right? And so the tool stays on there long enough in case they need it. And that's what I'm saying. Like, why do we need off-leash training? Like, did you see the jot form that came in on that dog that mauled that guy's hand? Did you see it? long story short, had asked 3 veterinarians for a BE. And she was turned down by all 3 vets, saying that they did not believe in euthanizing a healthy dog and that she should go to the animal behavior clinic and get the dog on Prozac right away. A phone call with those trainers was $250 with a potential of a script. This dog was threatening an 11-year-old child in the house. This dog had its first bite at 11 months and had bit a child over a resource the first week they had the dog in the hand and broke skin, but did not requiring medical attention. The second bite, the dog had, I think, five bites total, and each one in succession was increasing in pressure. The last few bites was a pet walker that walked the dog several days a week that came to pet sit for them for a few days over the holiday. And they went for a walk, and she said the dog was tense. They went for a walk, and when they came back from the walk, she went in the house first. The pet walker was following her. The dog turned around, blocked the door. She did not have a chance to pull the dog back, and the dog grabbed the pet walker in the forearm. This was a dog that knew her, she'd been coming in the house, walking the dog. She hadn't seen the dog in a few months.
Client was home.
She was reintroducing the dog to the person who was the pet walker, who had walked the dog 2-3 days a week, because they hadn't done that in a while. And she was going to come and care for the dog while they were out of town. And so she was doing a walk to reintroduce the dog, because this lady really had a good sense. Like she used words like would stiffen, would stare, like she was picking up on a lot of things. And she knew that when those things would happen, that she'd have to move the dog or the dog bite. So that was a forearm bite that on a pretty heavy jacket managed to put puncture wounds on her. And that was the first required medical attention bite. I take that back. There was one before that. Now, mind you, none of these bites ever got reported by any of the doctors. Okay. The last bite that just happened, which made her contact the vet, was a boy who was a boyfriend to her daughter, lived in the house for 2 months, was in the kitchen cooking soup with the girlfriend. The dog walked in the room, stopped, looked at him, jumped up, grabbed him by the forearm, started shaking him out, let go of him, re-grabbed him, grabbed him on his hand, and mauled his hand. So this dog is growling at the 18-year-old daughter when she would hug him too much, which of course, like, okay, we know that shouldn't be happening, right? But nonetheless, her face was there. She's so lucky that nothing happened. The 11-year-old son that lived with the dog didn't even want to be in the same room with the dog. But the veterinarian refused euthanasia, 3 of them. The dog is scheduled for euthanasia on Tuesday. I did not need to go see this dog to tell her that I agreed with her to euthanize this dog. And I mean, what are we doing here? We're going to train this dog and put it back in a home with an 11-year-old that is threatening?
Well, it's now mauled too. It's now threatened multiple family members.
The dog had at least 5 bites, and 3 needed medical attention. And the last one was a mauling. What I'm saying is, like, when we looked at this dog, oh, by the way, the dog was a resource guarder, and they hired the trainer over the resource guarding with the child. And the trainer gave them things to work on, gave them no warning at all, saying that this was going to escalate, that this was going to be a problem. This was a fixable problem. This was fixable. You just need to train the dog. Oh, and by the way, they did virtual training. They didn't even need to come see the dog, because this is a simple thing to fix. This is where it ended up.
I told you, I had a client who had 2 very fearful dogs. And the one was like a pity mix. The pity mix was really aggressive towards people coming in the house. But he was scared.
It was a pit bull or American bully?
It was a mix of some sort.
How about we call him a mixed breed?
Well,
I'm fucking with you. It's all right.
Some kind of bully mix. Probably had pit bull because he's in New Mexico.
Okay.
I've done enough DNA tests. I know what's in these dogs.
I know you do.
I come in, I have the dog behind a gate. She has a baby gate for a living room, right? I come in, get her to put a leash on the dog, and we just kind of sit down, and I have her put the dog behind her. The dog calms down, and we get it to the point that we can start like walking around. And the other one was a little like Pomeranian mix that was scared. The trainer she had hired before me charged her $1,000 came out to the house once, threw food at the dog for an hour. The dog never stopped growling at her. And the rest of the 3 sessions she did virtual. I think she did those virtual because she didn't know what to do with the dog. And I think she was scared.
Yeah, probably. Listen, if you can't help the dog any further,
you should say
it's
so.
okay. We're not in the business of practicing dog training. And when you get to a place where you start practicing on the dogs that you're getting in for training and being paid for, you need to check yourself a little bit, because if you don't know what you're doing, you need to stick within your bubble. And then if you want to learn those things, there are lots of wonderful trainers out there that can teach you things. And you can excel in the areas you want to excel in. But don't guinea pig on people's dogs, because it can really harm them. And, I get it if we're stuck. That's why we reach out to each other and we help each other and we talk to each other. I mean, Julie and I do it all the time. Like, hey, I had this case and this is what I was thinking. What do you think? Or like, we don't even tell each other what we think. Sometimes we go, what would you do with this? Or here's a photo. What do you see? And that's like checking ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
But if you really don't
know and you're really, really stuck, or that you can only take the dog so far, it's the best credit on you for saying, hey, I need some help with this. Like, this is not I can't help you as a client. I can't help you any further.
I use doctor analogy, like there's general practitioners and then there's specialists.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with being a general practitioner. In fact, everyone really values their general practitioner. That person isn't going to do brain surgery on someone. They're going to send that person to a specialist. So this actually, the trainer I'm talking about is quite well known here. But I think if you're to the point where you're not making progress with the dog, I mean, just be like ethical and say, hey, I'm not making progress. Here's your money back and try someone else.
People would value that more than trying something and like making it worse or not helping. And, if you want to learn with dogs that you feel like you're getting stuck on, volunteering with rescues that have those types of dogs, and then you take those types of dogs to trainers that can teach you what you want to learn.
Which, speaking of, we should mention that you do shadow programs.
Yeah.
It's dogs to Phyllis, and she will help you and walk you through it.
I'm looking forward to this. I have had a couple of people come out already, and my shadow programs are as such that you bring dogs that you're being paid to train. We teach you on those dogs so that you are not having to stop your job and stop working and stop getting paid while you're learning. It's been working out really nicely for the students that have come out here.
And a lot of times your clients actually think that's really cool because they're getting two trainers.
Their clients actually, the students that came out here, the clients thought it was cool. And they actually paid.
You're getting 2 trainers for the price of 1.
That's right. There's things, there's your basic dog. There's your dog that's got a little bit of nervousness. There's your dog that's got just the wilds and crazies and goofies. But then there are the ones that are shut down, or the ones that are extreme or have gone through an extraordinary amount of trauma. Those dogs need more.
Yeah.
And if you're dealing with serious behavioral issues, obedience training does not fix the root of all behavioral problems.
I would argue it probably doesn't fix a lot of even the mild cases. It can, because it does create, I think doing something together with your dog, especially if the dog likes obedience, because I have had plenty of dogs that enjoy doing
Yeah.
Especially if there's food involved.
This is why I'm talking about more serious behavioral issues.
Yeah.
Dogs that have really harmed something or someone or themselves, or they're breaking out of windows. They can't settle in anxiety. You can't get the dog to settle down. The dog is so anxious. You have separation anxiety, all for another podcast. Doesn't exist. It's created by humans. It's not a thing. Anxiety is genetic and exists.
What I was trying to say, though, is that even with mild cases, obedience training has its limits. And if you don't change the relationship with your dog, the obedience training will always be a struggle.
Yeah, and we hear trainers saying that all the time. The dog was so good for me and I just don't understand. Or the dog was great, and then for whatever reason, the dog came after me. I mean, there was a case not too long ago where somebody got really badly hurt by a dog, and she said that she saw absolutely no warning whatsoever. And I'm thinking, there's always a warning, unless the dog has a brain tumor or there's something going on, and then you see that too because the dog isn't right. There are no warnings if you don't know what to look for. Getting seriously hurt is not the idea. I had one serious bite the first 8 months of my career. 8 months into training dogs, I got mauled. And I have not been bitten since. I may have taken a nick here and there from not worrying about things and reaching in and doing things, right? Now, I have not been bitten. I have not required any medical attention. And the idea is not to push the dog past that threshold where it wants to bite you. You know, the idea is that you don't get bit, trained dogs. I don't look at it as a badge of honor that I would wear multiple bites. Now, I did have 2 bites prior to training dogs also.
Well,
one was being very silly with a dog and getting bit right above the eye, and the other one was getting bit in the mouth because I picked up the wrong dog at the vet clinic. Picked the wrong Sheltie out of the wrong cage. The vet said, go back there and get the Sheltie out of the kennel. So I went in, and the dog was in the middle kennel, and I went and picked it up. And it was the Sheltie in the bottom kennel that he wanted me to get. And it got me right here. And I've had a few little bumps, but I haven't.
That's where you get it from when you say, go take out the lab. And I'm like, but there's 3.
I mean, yeah, I've got a bad habit of doing, go get the black dog, go get the brown dog, go get these dogs have names. Well, you know.
Thank you so much for joining me, Julie Hart, for this podcast. I hope you found it inspirational and educational and might cause you to look a little deeper into that canine companion sitting next to you today. Find out more about my online and in-person dog training options. Please go to my website, hearttoheartcanine.com, and go to store to see my workshops. And for online learning, click on the online learning tab. I have tons of online learning about no-centric methods, fearful dogs, feral dogs, and reactivity. Please keep in mind, this podcast is not made for individual dog training information. We do not know your dog. We do not know you. And so this podcast is made merely for entertainment and educational purposes. Please contact a professional trainer or one of my guests or me if you have a dog training concern. Dogs can be inherently dangerous, and it's good to exercise common sense and caution when dealing with dogs. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit like or subscribe or follow to be notified of our next episode. Your continued support is very much appreciated. I really treasure all the good feedback and personal messages I've gotten about my guests on this podcast. Hope you all have a great day.